We just gave you the whole like intro spiel off the top of the pod, but here he is, Dylan Cease, the Cy Young runner-up in the American League this past year, current Chicago White Sox flamethrower and a former minor league organization mate of Taylor Davis. This is how that
Yes.
connect came to be, right? Taylor,
Yep.
what are your first memories of a young Dylan Cease?
So my first memories are interesting, man. So let's see. I first ran into Dylan after he got drafted. I was rehabbing. I got hurt in 2016. I hurt my wrist, and he
Yep.
was in Arizona also, and I spent like a couple months there. And so we hung out a little bit, and then I ended up going to short season to play a little bit where he was. And so,
But you were Triple A. I think you were double or Triple A at the time, though, right?
yes, I had been in my first year in AAA was 2015, and but I wasn't on the 40-man roster. And so, fun fact for the listeners: if you're not on the 40-man roster, you can't just rehab anywhere. You could only at the time you could only rehab in short seasons. I don't know what you can do now since there's no short seasons. But anyway, so I go to Eugene, and I think I caught one. I caught one of your outings. Well, I got to catch an outing.
Yep. I
It
think it
wasn't
was
as
actually. I think it was like in the playoff hunt too. You were like our new ringer, you know.
All I know is I got a hit in my first two at bats, and then I didn't get a hit the rest of my rehab stint. So I was ready to get out of Eugene. Okay, that's what I remember.
Yeah, man. Hey, Dylan, what are your first memories of savvy veteran Taylor Davis of the Eugene Emeralds?
I think just like picking his brain and being like, I was so new in baseball at that point. So the fact that he had climbed up through all the levels, I think I just remember like asking him like, hey, what's this place like? Like, what is that level of baseball like? Kind of like probably like a pesky like little brother, you know?
Totally.
No,
understand.
it was good. It was good. I do think, one thing to point out, like, let's point out the elephant in the room. Like, Dylan's got great stuff. So, like, I think one thing that was interesting about our conversations, a lot of conversations I have with pitchers, when we talk about trying to get guys out, like, has to do with game plan and stuff like that. And a lot of the stuff that me and Dylan talked about was more just on how do you be the best Dylan Cease. And I think that clearly you're on the right track. You're doing it.
Thank you.
And Jack, I'll tell you this, dude. Like, I do remember, I knew Dylan was a big prospect. We all, I knew his signing bonus when he got it, right? So like, but I didn't get to see him pitch, right? He was one of the guys that he signed, and he signed needing TJ.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I didn't get to see him throw for a while. And I remember when I got to Eugene, I asked some of the guys, I was like, hey, like, how does Dylan look? How's he been looking? Because I always liked him as a person, but I never got to see him pitch. And I just remember somebody come up to me and go, yeah, his last outing was pretty good. Really? Oh yeah. Well, how'd he do? Well, he was like 98 to 101 through 5 innings. So I was like, all right, yeah, we'll be all right. You know what, Dylan? I do remember this. Dylan hit a guy in the head with a curveball the game I caught him. I do remember that. I think we were in Everett. But anyway, huh?
I don't remember that. Was it a righty or lefty? Let's see if we can spur my memory a little bit. Righty?
It was a righty. We'll have to go look it up. Yeah, pretty sure you hit a guy in the head with a curveball because it was like 80. It was like 84, and like that's as hard as most people's fastballs. I just remember this guy going to the ground, and I'm thinking in my head like, dude, we hit you with a curveball. Like, get up, you're all right.
Yeah, way better than getting hit with a heater.
Hey, Dylan, Taylor just mentioned something interesting, and I kind of want to start there. I kind of want to work forward. And you were a TJ guy right after the draft. And, so much of the conversation around baseball, I mean, starting with a super loaded question, right? But so much of the conversation around baseball and pitching, and especially pitching at the highest level, where your stuff is the grossest that you will find it. Super, super loaded question, but are you almost thankful that you got it out of the way? Because so many guys, it almost feels like that surgery, you just got to get it out of the way. I know McClanahan was the same way at USF. So many examples of guys getting it young and then probably not dealing with any more issues for the majority of their career.
Yeah, I think I wish I had known a little bit more about how to take care of myself better, but I mean I was just a kid, so I can't really beat myself too much about that. But no, I think everything worked out. It would have been more ideal if I had not gotten it and I would still be healthy now. But I think there's actually really strong evidence of like guys getting it young and having it last a good while. So, I'm just thankful it's held out and I've gotten this far with it.
Yeah.
I feel like the conversation in baseball and the conversation maybe even in the medical community, to be honest with you, has kind of shifted from like, oh, he's had TJ to, oh, he's already had Tommy John.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Because the medicine, the doctors are so good. The surgery is, the people that you're going to, which, like, kind of a cool thing, but kind of a wild thing too, that like, if you get Tommy John, if you're a major league starting pitcher and you get Tommy John, chances are you're getting it by like one of four guys. And we could
Yeah.
list all four guys. So like, those four guys are so talented at what they do that teams don't worry about it anymore.
Yep.
And I think that you're spot on, like, especially with, I remember hearing something about, like, if you were in your 20s and you got it, it was like a 8-year window. That was like your guess. Their guess was like, hey, you got 8 years. But I think you're right. I think as the younger you go, the more your body can grow and adapt to that UCL as soon as you put it in. And so I think that it changes a little bit. But yeah, that was funny, man. And it was so funny because, like, it's funny looking back at it now because I think so many people didn't know who Dylan was or what Dylan was going to be when he was with the Cubs. Because, even before he got traded, like, you didn't play that long, right? Like, what, a year? You had like a year and a half of playing.
I had that short season, so that was what, 2 months, and then I had half of low A, and
So half of 2 years.
And I had missed my senior year of high school. So I had missed, so I didn't pitch in, what is that, 2014, barely any in 2015. So like I was so raw and early in my career that I mean, I really didn't know anything, honestly. I was just trying to pick anyone's brain and trying to like figure it out as I went. So you're spot on with that. I was very raw.
How do you feel yeah. No, you go.
I was going to say, the only thing that is interesting to me is you say that you're really raw, but I think if you would have broken yourself down, you weren't quite as raw as you think. Like,
True.
Your movements are really clean. Yeah. And the reason I can say that all of that is because you pitched the exact same today as you pitched in 2016 when I caught you. Yeah, you're a little more polished because you've been on the mound for more innings. But the reality is, like, your mechanics are extremely similar. So, like, you don't give yourself enough credit. You were an extremely polished high school pitcher as a high school junior. Which is something really cool to say,
Yeah, that kind of transitions into my next question here because, yeah, it's so mechanically sound. And when you think like, disgusting stuff guys like you're one of the, tippy top names that comes to mind when you think, hey, best stuff in Major League Baseball here. But pitchability is obviously a big thing. And you mentioned like, hey, you're trying to pick these guys' brains when you're in the Cubs system and when you're working your way through the White Sox system. When do you feel like you really learned how to pitch at the professional level? Was that with the Cubs or was that when you got to the upper level minors? Did it take a couple years in Major League Baseball?
I think 2021 honestly was the first year that I kind of started transitioning more into a pitcher. And then this year was the peak of, I guess, a more mature mindset and understanding of how everything worked. But up and before then, I feel like I was just in try to figure it out mode. And then, 2021 is where I really feel like I started getting a good base. And then that's when I got to start working with Ethan Katz, our pitching coach, who just did a really good job of laying down like the areas I needed to improve on. Like before that, I always was a stuff guy. And, I would kind of figure my way through things, but I was never, I don't know, it didn't really click a lot, I feel like, especially, so I killed it in AA. Triple I didn't do well. My first couple years in the big leagues, I didn't do well. Yeah. And, I feel like there was just that sort of that learning curve where I met that time where just stuff alone couldn't get the job done. There had to be that next phase of using it properly and figuring out how to adapt and figuring out basically what needed to be done. So 2021 for me is the first year that stands out.
Got you. What actually clicked for you? Like, without revealing any state secrets or anything, like, hey, 2020 going into 21. Yeah.
So Ethan had got me on this device called the core velocity belt. And basically his whole thing was showing me how to use my legs properly, because I had historically been a good fastball rod guy, but I had lost that in like the couple years I'd been in the big leagues. I was getting a lot of cut and my fastball was flat. So he got me on that, and basically my whole career up to that, I had thought mechanically. Like I was just wired to like, for whatever reason, that's how I like to think, which I actually would not recommend looking back. But um, I was a very mechanical thinker. Like I needed to do this with my body and this and that to create this. Whereas once I got on the core velo belt and I got that feel and that showed me the right way, I then started transitioning to where am I aiming? Where do I need to start the ball to get it in the strike zone? Like little things like that that are subtle but make a world of difference.
Yeah.
I think you're relatively a big thinker in general, like your lifestyle, right?
Barely,
Like you're a big thinker. And
yeah,
so I think one interesting part about what you just said is that um you didn't change away from yourself. You didn't stop thinking. You just figured out what to think about.
exactly.
And I think that's super important. I think I tell guys all the time that like I think so few people, elite athletes included, know exactly what they do. I think we all know what we think, and we know what we think to make us do those right moves.
Yep.
And the guys that know that better know themselves. I've always said, like, if you know yourself the best, those are the best baseball players. You
Yep.
know, it's not necessarily anything other than that, and it's figuring out what to think. That's what it is to me. That's a great statement.
Yep.
So, obviously Taylor just pointed out that you're a big thinker. Obviously you're a big disc golf player as well.
I
I
can't
didn't know that.
I can't guarantee you I'm a big thinker, but I can guarantee you I'm a big disc golf guy.
Okay. So
Wow, I didn't even know that.
yeah, man. Two-parter. That was what in the Sun Times. I think the Sun Times just tried to unpack Dylan Cease, and so much of that was disc golf. But yeah, two-part question. Number one, best disc golf score. Number two,
Mhm.
and it's much broader. I expect a longer answer for number two. How else do you kind of disconnect from baseball? Because obviously, as a professional baseball player, you need those concrete disconnects to probably stay sane.
Absolutely. Best score with disc golf. So disc golf sort of does this rating system to keep it to make it short. I've shot under par on some courses, but it's kind of hard to quantify that because different courses have different like difficulty level. I've shot probably between a 950 to 975 rated round, which is actually pretty decent. The high end players will shoot like a 1050, which it's hard to explain if you don't know what it is.
It sounds
Not
like SAT scores. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you lost me there.
Yeah. Uh, I'll say I'm decent at disc golf, but I'm not great, and I've accepted that. And now when I play, I try to enjoy it, but it is difficult when you're having those days. Just like in baseball, it's hard to enjoy things when you're not having high levels of success.
Right.
So with
You
disc
play
golf,
right-handed?
yeah, I play right-handed, and I don't get to play too often. In the off season, I'll play like the first 6 weeks that I'm not throwing. I'll be able to play maybe a couple times a week if I'm lucky.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I'm doing some big things in the disc golf world. Actually, we got some stuff coming up.
Good,
Tell
man.
me you're gonna have your own discs. Are you gonna have your own discs? Do I need to have a bag of Dylan Cease discs?
I've released one run of discs through Discraft, but I just bought some land and I'm building a course. I'm having the top player that's ever played. He's going to design it, and we haven't really even announced it yet, but we're like in the very end stages of putting that whole thing together. So
Wow,
yeah,
that's awesome. Where is that, in Atlanta?
it's going to be in Tuscaloosa.
Oh
Sweet.
wow,
Yeah,
roll
going to be in
tide.
Tuscaloosa. So that's not even officially announced yet.
Yeah, do you want that off the pod?
We might have to have that off, but it's not that big of a deal. I mean, I've kind of talked about it before, but we didn't really want to go until we were like boots on the ground, just in case, because it would be kind of embarrassing if you're like, hey man, I'm going to build this epic thing, and then they
Yeah,
find
Didn't happen.
sort of extinct something on there and you can't build, and then it's like yeah. So I'm trying to kind of, I don't want to call it build a legacy in disc golf, but I'm trying to get really creative.
Nice.
Do some really creative things. And then something I've gotten into recently is painting. I really love painting. This season, I was kind of at that point in the season where I was getting a little worn out, and I kind of just needed a little bit of a pick me up. Can you guys see me right now?
No, we just lost you for a minute.
Okay, I'm getting a phone call.
There we go.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay. So I went to this art museum in Kansas City, and I just remember being like super inspired and blown away by a lot of the art I was seeing, and then the fact that there was so much history behind it, where some of this stuff was painted in the 1400s, the 1600s.
Yeah.
I left there feeling so invigorated. I was like, man, I got to give this thing a try. And I say I don't have any artistic ability, but I've actually produced some art that I'm very proud of. So
Yeah, you definitely seem like a guy that has some artistic. Like I could see you being Bob Ross, no doubt.
I want to actually learn some technical ability with it, because right now my painting is totally just like perseverance and effort, because it's not the most natural thing for me, but man, I've had so much fun doing it. Yeah. So painting. Awesome. This season, I also spent a lot of time researching permaculture and some different like agricultural stuff. I kind of have a dream of owning or paying for an orchard, some sort of like fruit, wide variety of fruit orchard, which I don't know exactly what that would manifest into, like a farmer's market or just you pick or just something personal. I don't know, but I've got a really big desire to do something in the agricultural space as well.
So that just screams curiosity, right? Like you are a very curious person. And I think
that has always been the case.
Right? Yes. Like, I mean, and Ethan Katz probably loves that, right? I know White Sox fans love that about you. And I know that probably drives you to gain more knowledge about Dylan Cease, the pitcher. And I've talked to Codify, Michael Fisher, on a different podcast, and, he's raved about you. Where does curiosity fit into your daily schedule as a starting pitcher in Major League Baseball? How are you always trying to find that new gear to improve?
I would say, and this is one thing that I added this year, I think a lot of that curiosity comes from a desire to create. I can only explain it as like having this sort of like creative energy that if I don't express it, it kind of can turn negative. Like it can sort of turn into doubts or whatever. So the more that I use that energy, like consciously, to create something, the better I am. So this year I started visualizing and keeping a journal with it, because my initial thought, it was last off season, I was kind of struggling with some things. So I decided to start visualizing. My initial thought would be, it would be really cool to visualize and sort of track what I'm visualizing and write it down and then turn it into a book one day if I were to have, a lot of success. So I kept a journal of it all season. I don't know if I'd ever release it, because it ends up almost kind of turning into like a diary. And I don't know if I'd want the world to know like my super inner workings, but I think just visualizing and sort of like being creative in that sense, and like sort of setting a direction for how I want things to go and want to be and all that, can really help.
One thing that struck me, one reason I think I really liked you from the beginning was you've always wanted to learn. Admittedly, there were times where you were not the smartest guy in the room when you first got out of high school. Like
most of the time,
this guy, he was the funny kid, right? Like you were the funny kid, and that's which is why I think a lot of people didn't take you serious with the Cubs. Yeah. Not take you serious. That's not the right word. That's not the right word. But like, you know what I'm saying? Right? They didn't see the potential.
I think a lot of it too is just being a kid. I mean, I didn't go to college, so like it was like straight from being this kind of just young high school kid to, with college kids. So I think a little bit of that, like I wasn't exactly the most mature stage of my life anyways, so
yeah,
like
but you weren't super immature, and I think that's why, like, to me it was because you wanted to learn. Like you were interested in learning. It didn't matter necessarily what it was about. And I think the creativity makes complete sense now, because you didn't really care. You wanted to be mentally stimulated, which I'm sure helps you in the pitching game, right? Like you can't go through a pregame and not be mentally stimulated, and vice versa. You're not going to go through the game and do the same thing. But it's super interesting. It's really cool for me. I don't know. It's been a while since we've even talked, but like, it's really cool for me to hear you have continued this path. I think it's a cool, you're still the same Dylan Cease, and that's
on the flip side, a little more, just a little more experienced me.
Well, you've learned, you've done what you've wanted to do. You did, and that's something that a lot of people can't say that they did. A lot of people can't say that on top of the fact that you're living your dream, hopefully, and you're performing, like you're also getting to do what you want to do outside of baseball. And that's
True.
really cool. And I think a lot of people forget that baseball players have lives outside of the game, and that's important also. And that guys that can't do stuff away from the field, guys that can't figure it out away from the field, it eats you up.
Absolutely.
And you know what I mean? And that can totally change you. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a guy that I love baseball. I love everything about baseball. The field is everything for me, so that's fine. But there are plenty of people, as you know, that like, hey, I got to get away, and I got to get away for a while, and I got to when I'm away, if I'm not doing something to get better, to better myself, I'm gonna go nuts. And I tell people all the time, like, and I think you know this, but like a lot of getting through a season is like the statement of getting through a season is real for a lot of people. Like
Yes.
162 games is a long time. It's not for most people. For people like me, yeah, it's sick. Like I want to get to a chance where I could do that. I want to get up and down, whatever. But the guys that are in the big leagues, you're in the big leagues all year long. It's not a cakewalk. Like playing every single day. Yeah, the don't get me wrong. You're staying in really nice places. You're flying on nice planes. You're eating good food, but you're away from your family a lot. You're traveling every third
You have
day.
no free time.
You have
You're
no
basically
free time.
you're plugged into high intensity battle for 8 months out of the year, where basically everything you do matters.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everything. And so, and Jack, I don't even know. I'm gonna probably transition into something else here, because I wanted to talk about this. I think it's super interesting. And Dylan, this is funny. My wife actually had the idea to bring you on because she read an article about how you were the top earner in the bonus pool. And
Yep.
so she was like reading it. And she's like, "Man, don't you know Dylan?" And I was like, "Yeah." It's all we call him. But like one thing I want to point out about that is like that's really cool. I think that's awesome. Obviously, It's all sick. It's cool for you. Awesome.
Yeah.
But like one thing I want the fans to know is like by no means did that help you succeed. Like by no means did you look at that and go, "Man, I got to make this extra $2 million in the bonus pool."
Right.
Like
Yeah.
all that did was give you money that you rightfully earned because you performed better than you were paid to perform.
Yep.
But I do think it's really cool, and it's a really cool thing for you. I think you're going to be in the history books for it. I hope you're in the history books for it. But it's a cool thing to talk about, and a cool thing that happened, for you.
Yeah, and it's allowed me. It's kind of given me the freedom. Like I was able to come back, and I'm a big guy who's I'm constantly finding the new hobbies or passions or whatever. So it just gave me a little bit of like money, a little bit of room to breathe. So like I built a koi pond behind my house. That's like super relaxing, that I love. And then I was able to do the disc golf course, and without, like, if I didn't get the bonus, maybe I don't get to do stuff like that. But you're right. It is something that, and I always hate to say like rightfully this and rightfully that, because it's just hard. It can be hard if you have that mindset. You can always feel like you are shorted, which that does happen a lot in the game of baseball, if we're being honest. But it is nice to be rewarded for high performance, especially when you are on league minimum, and you make all your starts and you go out and you grind. And don't get me wrong, league minimum is a lot of money, but it's after taxes and after spending money at living in expensive cities, it's definitely not as much as I think people would think it is.
Well, and you want to take care of people too.
Yeah,
you have to
absolutely.
take care of people. You have to do that. That's people took care of you.
Absolutely.
And the other part of this is like, let's take, people want to talk about, at least I like to talk about market value. Like the reality is that the money that we're talking about is market value. So like when people look at any of these contracts that are, guys getting 30, $40 million a year, that's market value. You're only worth as much as somebody else will pay you.
Yes.
But what I'll tell you is that you performed at a level that was higher than your market value, and it was proven to be higher than your market value because the guy that was one step above you was making 30 something million last year. So yeah, you got $2 million, and that's fantastic and that's awesome. But you pitched and you gained significantly more value to that. And that was not the number that you were getting paid prior was not a number that you agreed to. It was a number
No, it's forced.
that it was mandated, right?
Yeah.
And so, and like you said, it's a lot of money. We agreed to it in the CBA. It's fantastic. But it's not $35 million. And
Yeah.
so I do
It's
think
not even a couple million. It's
right.
not enough. I mean, it's a lot, but it's not enough to like put a
Not,
dent in living the rest of your life, you know?
Right.
You're not life-changing money, you know?
Yeah.
So something that I want to point to, and Taylor just mentioned it, right? I mean, you know, the guy ahead of you, the only guy ahead of you in American League Cy Young voting is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He just signed a deal for $43 million AAV, like stupid money.
Yep.
That start that you made at home against Houston, I want to say August 16, it was Cease and Verlander. Like that was the matchup. That was the pitching matchup of the year in Major League Baseball. Did you have the thought in the back of your mind, like, damn, this is almost a welcome to the big leagues moment 4 years into my major league career? Like, what were your thoughts going into that start?
Well, it was I was answering a lot of media up to that start because it was before the start even. I mean, like, I felt like even a week before, and it was already being hyped as, you know, whoever wins this is going to win the Cy Young kind of thing. I guess it really almost doesn't feel real in a sense because like he was like a guy that when I was a kid, I was like watching him and rooting for him. So
right.
To be going up against him,
yeah,
it's very surreal and hard to explain. So
you don't think those guys are real. You don't think those guys are real.
Yeah.
I remember like the first time I walked into a big league clubhouse and like I saw some guys that I had watched growing up, and I just remember thinking like, and my dad always said this, right? Like I always thought my dad always said like, look, everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time. Like they're the exact same guy as you, and like, but you don't realize that. You see these people on TV and you see them making $40 million, and you're like, these people aren't real. They're not real people. Like,
yep. But you think they're perfect.
Yeah, I always remember even thinking like from a playing aspect, I remember thinking like they must have like another pitch. Like when you get to the big leagues, you got something. There's something else. There's something else that you're the reality. No, they're just people, and it's the exact same thing. But it is extremely hard to understand that concept, even when you're in it, as you just said. Like you're on the mound, standing next to these guys, and you have no idea because they're the same guy. You're the guy. You have a chance to be just as good as that guy. You know, and how cool is that? I don't know. It's a really interesting concept, but like I've always felt like they don't seem real. They seemed like fictional characters, you know, like Jack said, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Guy's one of the best pitchers of the generation. And for you to be on the mound against him, that's
with that kind of fanfare around the start, right? I mean, it's
right.
Something like, hey, you know, you're getting your cup of coffee in the big leagues and, oh, Justin Verlander happens to be on the other side. It is the marquee matchup of the month in Major League Baseball. Right. And you were a part of that.
Yeah, honestly, it's, you know, now that you bring it up, I haven't even really reflected on it that much because I think baseball is just so much, what are you doing for me now, that I'm just focused on like, now what do I have to do to like show up next year and be better next year? But yeah, it's cool you guys bring that up. I hadn't thought about that in a while, and it definitely is not a very common experience.
Yeah. So natural follow-up question, what are you doing to get better for next year?
Ooh, I've been spending a lot of time working on my changeup. So basically right now I'm in the phase of just training arm speed with it. I'm not super concerned with the movement profile or anything like that. I haven't been off the mound or anything. So right now I'm training arm speed, and I'm visualizing basically the movement and how I want it to be. So I just, you know, you watch guys like Scherzer and all these guys that have these nasty changeups. And for me, it's if I added a changeup, it would take me to a whole nother level. And if I improve my fastball command, it'll take me to a whole nother level. So, you know, right now I'm really focusing on the changeup, but the fastball command will also have to be a big focus.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think honestly a little bit of that'll like go hand in hand because you get your fastball command, you're going to get to go deeper into games, but for you to go deeper into games, you've got to have that third solidified pitch. So if you can go like it would almost be like a double-edged sword. Like if you can go deeper into games without that third pitch, it may be worse for you. So like you're dead on. Like you get that third pitch and you're in the seventh inning, like Yeah, that's fun. Facing 99 in the seventh. Yeah. So I get it. That's kind of scary. If I'm a hitter, that's scary.
Hey, Dylan, last one from me. I mean, that pitching staff in Chicago is full of characters. And obviously,
Yeah.
Thoughts with Liam right now, who's, going to fight like hell. And I know he's going to join you guys very, very quickly. But you've got a Liam who had his own tarot card reader, and Lucas Giolito, who obviously is, a high level thinker. It's been well documented as well. And Lance Lynn, who is a badass. And I'm just curious how you guys work off of each other, and how much confidence you derive from other guys on that staff.
Yeah, we definitely got some big personalities. It's a lot of different personality and different traits to sort of learn from, like with Lance, the guy pitches with his balls. So you get to see once every 5 days, you get to go and see someone who is literally just, he'll throw it right down the middle. He'll tell you it's coming, and he wants to challenge you like that, So like, even if I don't talk to the guy, I learn just from watching him go out and compete and put it on the line. Then you got, like you said, Lucas, who is more of a thinker and is constantly working on, if he doesn't like where his analytics are, or he wants to change something, he's sitting there tinkering with it. So, it's just a wide variety of guys to watch from. And then obviously the biggest thing is just seeing like what is successful for each player, and what's working well. So if like, really for me, Lucas, and have as much success as he's had with his changeup, has been a huge inspiration for me to want to start throwing it. So just seeing what works for guys, and trying to dissect it and see if I can bring it to my own game is definitely big.
Got you. Taylor, you got anything else?
I mean, the only thing I'll add is one of the things, Dylan, that I've talked about on this podcast in the past was I brought up the two guys that I always bring up when I talk about this are I love to bring Cole Hamels and John Lester into this situation. I love to talk about those guys because Cole Hamels and John Lester to me are the two guys that changed my mind about big game pitchers. I never really felt like that was a thing. I always felt like, a big game pitcher, like whatever. I want the best guy out there.
Yeah.
And then I met John Lester. You've met John Lester and Cole Hamels, and like you just said this about Lance Lynn. This is why I think this is perfect. Is like, to me, you are a guy that you're going to go out there every single day, and you're going to know that if it's the best you're going to dominate that team. That's how Cole Hamels is. It didn't matter. That doesn't mean you don't do your homework. That just means that you're so prepared that you get on the mound. As long as I can be the best me, it doesn't matter. And John Lester was, I don't care who's in the box. F you. I'm beating you. I'm better than you. That's Lance Lynn. You know what I mean? Like, I think that both of those, and it just comes back to like, there's more than one way to skin a cat. But I think that both of those are necessary, and both of those are necessary on a staff to it's awesome to have those mindsets on a staff, especially on a team that wants to go to the playoffs, because you get those guys in the playoffs, you rally around both of those guys. Yep. Like it's a different rally, but it's cool, and it's a fun experience.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, like, it's not underrated, but you definitely can't like analytically look at what that, something like that, and it makes a world of difference. So it definitely doesn't surprise me. I think I watched Cole Hamels a lot when I was young, and it seemed like he was always pitching in, for that Phillies team that was in the playoffs or in the World Series. And I remember with Lester, just him throwing bullpens and never missing a spot. Didn't matter what pitch it was.
Crazy.
Smoothest. He'll throw his cutter outside perfectly every time. That guy, man, that guy was good.
Love
that guy was real good.
Hey, you're good too, man. Dylan Cease, this was awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, dude.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, bro.